Hello, and thanks for visiting our channel. As we start this video, we're at holding short of runway 27 in Ormond Beach, Florida. Prior to the start of this video, I completed all my pre-flight actions, my run-up checks, and my pre-departure briefing. Today the winds are relatively calm out of the west, and I'll be making a normal takeoff in our Cessna 172. As I roll onto the runway, I verify the runway heading on the ground, in my compass, and on our directional gyro before adding full power to begin the takeoff roll. Now that we're in the takeoff roll, verifying that the engine instruments are all on the green, and the airspeed is alive, and since this is going to be a normal takeoff, we're going to rotate at 55 knots and climb out at our VY speed of 73 knots. So we've just made our turn to the northwest. We're heading to a small airport called Palatka Municipal Airport. The identifier is 28 Juliet. And our mission today is twofold. First, we need to get AVGAS, 100 low lead. And then our second part of the mission is I want to do some takeoffs and landings when I get back to Ormond Beach and just brush up on my skills a little bit. So AVGAS at Palatka is currently $4.89 per gallon. AVGAS at Ormond Beach is $6.55 per gallon. So by flying up there, putting 29 gallons in the airplane, I'm going to save about $40 to $45 on my fill up. And in my mind, I just got some free flying by going up to Palatka and getting some cheaper gas. Whenever I'm flying VFR, I use VFR Flight Following with air traffic. I live in the Ormond Beach area, so we have lots of busy flight schools in the Daytona, Ormond, and Flagler area, such as Embry-Riddle and Phoenix East and Sunrise. So there's tons of flight schools, lots of traffic in our area. We have a really busy practice area between the Ormond Beach Airport and the Palatka Airport, as well as to our west, we have some military operating areas that we wouldn't want to fly through. So in this case, just after my departure, I picked up VFR Flight Following, and air traffic, as always, was super helpful, calling out traffic. In this case, we had an airplane on our left-hand side, about my 9 o'clock position, about 300 feet below us, about a mile and a half away, and they were paralleling us as we're traveling north. I decided, and we were going the same airspeed, so I decided to turn to the northeast and then make a right 360 so that I could sequence myself behind that airplane and then go direct to Palatka. And it was a really great feeling knowing that air traffic was watching me. You can hear what they had to say.
Everything all right, sir? Looks like you're turning northeastbound. Everything all right, sir?
Oh, yeah, affirmative. I'm sorry. I'm doing a 360. I'm going to cut behind him over to Palatka. 7370 Palatka.
Okay, just let me know. It looked weird on my scope here.
Once I completed my 360 and went direct to Palatka, it wasn't long before I was being handed over to Jacksonville Approach. And when I was handed over to Jacksonville Approach, I decided to cancel our flight following. I had the field in sight, and I was maneuvering to set up for a left downwind entry to runway 27. For those of you that are not pilots, when you're flying into an uncontrolled airport or a pilot-controlled airport where they don't have an active control tower, we announce ourselves on a common traffic advisory frequency as to how we're going to be approaching the airport, what type of entry we're going to use, and what we're going to do when we get there. So in this case, about 15 miles out, I announced my intentions were to enter the left downwind to runway 27 so that I could land and go to the fuel pumps. So this happened to be a day when we had relatively light winds. It was absolutely beautiful, and the jump school at the Palatka Airport was very active. So at 15 miles out, I made my initial call and listened to the traffic in the area along with the weather to determine that they were using runway 27. So as I was making my approach to the airport, my plan was to enter a left downwind to runway 27 because that would be the most predictable entry into the traffic pattern, where the jump pilots and any other pilots in the area would absolutely understand where I was and what my intentions were to be. So I've just rolled out on short final, runway 27 in Palatka, and over on the right-hand side is where coming up to the runway. There's a white building off to the right-hand side with some picnic tables and things. That is the jump school at the Palatka Airport. So if you're ever interested in learning how to jump out of a perfectly good airplane, that's a great place to do it. I'm a nervous flyer as it is, and I can tell you more about that later, but you won't find me jumping out of an airplane anytime soon. So with the conditions being the way they are, winds were light out of the west, kind of right down the runway, decided on a normal landing, 30 degrees of flaps with a 65 knot approach speed, slowing to 60 to 61 knots over the threshold, over the numbers for a normal landing, and then rolling out on taxiway Charlie, and then from taxiway Charlie, going to taxi in to the self-serve fuel pumps to get cheap gas. Now that we are parked at the self-serve fuel pumps, the first thing we'll do is go over to the static grounding cable, and I will ground myself and discharge any static electricity that I've built up. And then I will attach that grounding cable to the airplane on a piece of metal. It could be a tie down, or in this case, I attach it to my exhaust. And what that does is, as the airplane is flying through the air, it builds up friction and surface tension with the air, and it can build up static electricity. So when you get on the ground, your tires are rubber and may not discharge that static electricity. So I landed, first thing we do is ground it so that any stray voltage can go straight to ground. When you're filling up an airplane and you're putting gas in, fumes are venting overboard through a fuel vent and also kind of out the cap as you're filling it up. And the last thing you would want to have happen is have the airplane catch fire at the fuel pumps because of static electricity. You can see I grabbed a little ladder and went over to the wings. This is a high wing Cessna 172, and you have to fill up 2 fuel tanks. There are 1 in each wing. So I always start with the wing furthest away from the tank and open it up, fill it up all the way to the top, and then put a cap on it, and then go back over to the other side and repeat the same process again. as I'm finishing up the fueling process, a jump school 182 pulled up behind me, left his motor running. He was in a bit of a hurry. So I completed the fueling operation and put the hose away, moved the ground cable, got everything out of the way, and then I just pulled the airplane by the prop forward to give enough room for that 182 to pull up so that he could get his fuel. So what you don't see in the video is the next step, and I believe it's the most important step, is I go back through the process of checking the fuel for contamination or any potential water. Before I left Ormond, I had checked my fuel to make sure it was good. So there's a little cup with a little stick at the top of it, and we can kind of push that up in the bottom of the wing, and it will drain fuel out of the bottom of the tank into a cup you can see through, and we'll use that to identify if there happens to be any water in the fuel. We'll look at the color, make sure it's blue. 100 low lead is blue. If it looks like a straw color or it's a different color than blue, we may have inadvertently gotten jet fuel. So we want to make sure that we have the right fuel, that it has no water in it, and there's no contamination, so no rust or anything in it. And since our fuel all checked good, I poured that fuel back into the wing and then started up and made my return trip back to Ormond Beach.